Welcome to class. Today I will teach you what clay is and how to properly prepare it, to use it on the wheel, to pinch it, to work with it in slabs. Clay is an ancient material. It is well over 70 million years old in its form. Clay is a magical material in the way that we can use it to mold and shape, and it keeps its shape. So here's a bag of clay. Here's some of the clay that we have. Can you see as I squish and mold it? Anytime it holds that shape. The reason why it can do that is because of the particles that are within the clay. The clay particles are flat, like plates, so we call them platelets. And what they do is they're able to smush and mold and shape with each other. Suspended in between those platelets is water molecules. So clay is a mixture of alumina, silica, and water. That is the chemical makeup of clay. And there's a bunch of different clays that can be used. There's some darker clays, there's some very white clays like porcelain. The clay that we use here in our studio is a stoneware cone tin B mix. Using my wire tool, I'm going to cut this clay into blocks. So using this, I'm going to extend my wire tool all the way, roll it down my fingers, and now I'm going to cut through it just a few inches below the top. I'm going to take this clay, turn it on its side, cut it down the middle. I'm going to take one of these blocks, turn it on its side again. I'm going to cut through it. So easiest way is to pull it nice and straight through, support it with my thumb so I don't pull it over. And now I'm going to weigh this amount of clay to see if I have 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of clay. Let's see if I've cut enough clay. So what we have right now is 2 pounds of clay. I'll give you a zoom in on that. 2 pounds of clay. 2 pounds of clay is a good place to start. We want to be somewhere in between here and there. So go ahead and make sure that your clay is weighed in between the 2 and the 1.5. Normally when I'm preparing to work on the potter's wheel, I want to make sure I have at least 2 to 3 balls of clay, just so when I do fail or mess up, that I can have a piece of clay that's ready for me right away, so I don't have to come get my bag of clay out again, weigh out some clay. I can make sure that I have at least 2 or 3 balls of clay to take with me. After you cut your clay, what you are going to do is you're going to seal and close up your bag. If you do not seal and close up your bag, your clay is going to get hard because the water in your clay is going to evaporate, which is going to mean that there's less water and just as much rock, just as much clay in here, but not as much water. So it's going to get harder and harder and harder. The entire process of ceramics is learning how to work with the stage of clay that we're in. This clay, straight out of the bag, is called wet clay. It's moldable, mendable. We can squish it, we can throw with it, we can shape it in a bunch of different ways. If your clay is too hard to wedge, it will be extremely difficult to work with on the wheel. So I need you to make sure that every time you cut out some clay, the first thing you do after that is you wrap up your clay once again. Here is the way that you can do that. Take your clay, run your hands on the side, getting any air out, and you're going to twist your bag nice and tight, all the way up. And then you're going to flip it upside down. So this is going to be on the table. Now our clay is sealed. It's not going to be losing any water to evaporation, anything of that sort. So it's going to make sure that it's nice and soft for us through the rest of the process. This bag of clay can and will last for you this entire semester for all of the projects that you need. So be careful and make sure that it gets wrapped up. See this little green tag that came with our clay? Please just throw it away. We don't want it here in the studio. The only thing this is going to do is get in the way. If you try and use this to reseal your bag, it's not going to work nearly as effectively as twisting it and throwing it upside down. So please throw this away. I don't want this to be found in our clay, because when we recycle our clay, I don't want any of this little wire to end up anywhere. So please throw it away. Let's begin the wedging process. So taking our ball of clay that we have weighed out, we have now sealed our bag of clay, we're going to take this clay to our worktop, which I'm working on our canvas tables. You can also work on our wood tables, anything of that sort, our hardyback tables, whatever we have in the studio at the time will be useful for you to be able to wedge your clay. So, like I mentioned, clay is an ancient material. It's been around for 70 million years, which is kind of crazy to think about, somewhere around there. And all of this clay, it's kind of wild to think, this may be the first time that human hands have ever touched it in the history of the earth. So, think about that. This was probably harvested by a big old machine, which was dumped into another big machine, which was then processed in a way, and then this was extruded out into these blocks of clay, put into bags, put into a box, and it is now in your hands. So it is time to wake it up. So what you're going to do, you're going to take your clay, you're going to smack it on the table. What this is doing is it's loosening some of the particles. Some of you may notice that your clay is getting softer and softer. What I'm doing, I'm taking it, I'm doing a few taps, and then I turn it just a little bit. So I'm turning it a little bit into a cylinder. It'll make it a little bit easier for me to wedge if it's in this shape. So I've woken up my clay. I'm saying, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to work. I'm going to turn you into something awesome. Okay, so I've got my clay. Now it's kind of turning into a cylinder a little bit. So it's a little bit wide, a little bit short, all of those things. What we're going to do, I'm going to teach you the proper body mechanics of how you're going to wedge your clay. A lot of the things we learn in ceramics are the proper ways to hold our body while we are working with the clay. One, it's going to protect your body. It's going to help you stay safe. And two, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to be able to work with our clay if you listen to the steps and ways that we can prepare and use our body to wedge. Now that I've woken up my clay, I need to show you the best way for you to stand while you're wedging. Please do not sit while you are wedging. You don't need the stools. The tables are the perfect height for just about everyone in the studio to be able to wedge properly. What you're going to do, you're going to get into a staggered stance. So your left foot forward, right foot back, or opposite. Doesn't matter. Just want to make sure that you've got a good, strong base for you to be able to stand. And then you've got your clay just a few inches away from the end of the table, maybe 6 inches to a foot away. And I'm going to lean forward into it. Putting my hands on the outside of my clay, I'm going to press forward just a little bit. I'm not going to arch my back like this. I want to make sure that I've got a nice, good, solid, straight back that I can press into it. I'm using this whole part of my arm. If I were to press like this, it's going to be working a little bit too much here. So I want to make sure that I use the whole part of my arm. If I align all of this, my radius, my ulna, all the way up, I'm going to make sure that I've got good pressure to be able to work with the clay. So staggered stance, standing, a little bit leaned over, straight back, pressing into the clay. Here's another example of how to stand a little bit closer of a view. Left foot forward, right foot back, or the opposite. Whatever feels comfortable for you. Get a little bit comfortable, but also make sure that you've got a nice, good, strong base. There are two reasons why we wedge our clay. First is to make it consistent. We do not want a hard part of our clay and a soft part of our clay. We want to make sure that we mix the clay thoroughly. So another way of saying that is to mix thoroughly. And second, remove air bubbles. Air bubbles will just get in the way. If we have an air bubble, especially as we're making our walls thinner, on the potter's wheel, those air bubbles are just going to combine and squish and then get in our way, causing bumps and things of that sort that we don't want in our clay. So the two reasons: to mix our clay and to remove air bubbles. So we're preparing our clay to be used in every way in the studio. Another thing that it helps us to do is recycle our clay. Recycling our clay is so useful, especially in a beginner's class. We want to make sure that we reuse our clay as often as we can. If we work on the potter's wheel and we mess up while we're working on that piece, we don't just throw it into the trash or throw it into the reclaim bucket. We want to make sure that we can recycle it. So set it out on the table, let it dry a little bit, then re-wedge it. What that's going to do is mix it again. Maybe it'll be a little bit softer for us again, removing the air bubbles, making sure it's ready for us to use once again on the wheel. Now that we know why we wedge, how we wedge, let's go ahead and do the process. So what we're going to do, my staggered stance, I'm going to make sure that I cup my hands. I'm going to press into the clay using this part of my hands. So I'm using nice meaty part. I'm pressing my arms into it at a 45-degree angle. We've woken it up, turning it a little bit into a cylinder, woken it up, and now we're going to go for it with wedging. So pressing in using this meaty part of my hand, I'm going to press at a 45-degree angle into the table. What that does, it creates some divots. That's really all we're looking to do, divots and a flat side of our clay. So go ahead and do that. Press in, pull up. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to pull it up another 45 degrees and do the same thing. 45, press, pull up. 45, press, pull up. 45, press, pull up. 45, and we're going to continue to do this process. What I do is I pull it up using my fingers and I press down using my palm. Pull up, fingers, press down, palm. What this is doing is slowly mixing our clay. Here's another angle of how to do it. Taking our hands, pulling it up, pressing down, pull, down. 45, 45. Here's one more angle for you. Taking my hands on the outside, cupping in my clay. I'm going to pull it up at 45 and press down. 45, press down. Now I don't want to press too hard because then I'll flatten out my clay. And the goal is to remove air bubbles. There's the temptation to fold over our clay. We want to make sure that we are not adding more folds into it. We're pressing them all out. So continue. Pull it up, cup it. If your clay starts to flare out a little bit, your hands are going too flat like this. Turn them in, turn them in. You want to cup the outside of your clay. Notice the shape that this clay is turning into as we wedge it. This technique is called the ram's head technique. Any guesses why? So we've got our horns spiraling out. We've got our jaw right here, and kind of some eye sockets is where we've been putting our pressure into it. Now we have wedged our clay. We're going to do this 50 to 100 times, making sure we do it at least 100 times when we are re-wedging our clay that we are recycling. Now we're going to turn this into the shape that we need it to. Now I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. So removing a little bit of this horn, I'm going to place it right here on the top, give it a little bit of a horn, turn it into a triceratops if you would. And now I'm going to continue to do the exact same motions that we were just doing. So pressing with my hand, right here, big meaty part, I'm going to press in. See how that one motion, I moved it from here up to there. So it's moving it along the way. I'm going to press in. See how I moved it once again? So it was from there, now it's right here. I'm going to continue to move that clay. So those spirals that we're creating are mixing our clay. So if we had a hard part of our clay, see how that has now become part of our clay right there. We continue to mix it thoroughly. Sometimes you may want to mix it on its side as well, so we can make sure it mixes all the way through. 45, press in, 45, press in, 45, press in. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the jaw and remove the horns. The way that I do that, I slowly ease off my pressure. So I'm going to press in, but not nearly as hard. I'm going to press just a little bit. My goal is I'm rolling this in. I'm not folding it, but I'm rolling it into the rest of my piece. Remove the jaw. Slowly, then I can start to roll it out. See, I've now removed the jaw, now I've got the horns, so I'm going to smack it in on the sides. Turning it a little bit. I've now got a piece of clay that's as tall as it is round, as it is wide. So I need to make sure that it's nice and round as well. I'm going to turn this into a ball. So I can roll it, I can pick it up, I can smack it with my hand. I'm going to turn this into a ball. Rotating it a little bit. Now I'm getting really close to a ball of clay. That's going to make it the easiest way for me to center on the wheel, which will be another video. Here's one more angle for those of you who might need it. So I'm taking my clay, I'm going to wake it up, turn it a little bit into a cylinder. I'm going to take the meaty part of my hand, staggered stance. I'm going to press into my clay. So press in, creating some divots. Flat side, bring it up 45 degrees, press it down again, 45, pressing, 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 wedge, 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 wedge. I've now created my ram's horn. See, we've got the two eye sockets going, spiral horns, the jaw. Now I'm going to remove the jaw. So ease up the pressure just a little bit, but same kind of rolling back motion. I'm not folding it, I'm rolling it. And then I can roll it out a little bit. Okay, so now my jaw is removed, but I've still got the horns. So I'm going to cut my hands, press it in. Okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to turn this into a ball of clay, so I can press into it. Cut my hand a little bit, press it in. Turning the clay, maybe I'll roll it on the table. Creating a ball of clay. This will be the easiest thing to center on the wheel.